At the very top of the food chain for law and order in our state is Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes. I would say good to see you, but it's not, because you're here for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it is a terrible day, and what has happened to Charlie Kirk is tragic and horrific. And I think everybody, no matter where they are on the political spectrum, can agree with that this is an awful day.
You know, I feel it's sadly ironic that his organization is called Turning Point. And when I heard that he had been gunned down today in Utah, the first thing that went through my mind was, oh my God, here we go again. It's the 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. It's the gunning down of the Minnesota lawmakers in their home. It's the hammer attack on Paul Pelosi. And it's happening again in this country. And I'm wondering, just as citizen of this country, Kris Mayes, do you think that this could be a turning point in this country? Because he had the ear of so many young Americans, and it takes young Americans to really make a change.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I hope so, and I hope it's a turning point in a good way, because I think this could go either way, right? I mean, we are obviously in a moment in our country's history, Mark, that is so polarized and has gotten to the point where people think that the way that we resolve our differences is by shooting one another and shooting political leaders, or trying to harm them, and that is not okay. And we have got to get back to a point where, number one, we need to take the political rhetoric down. We need to tone things down. We need to come back together. Yes, we have our differences. You know, people don't agree with one another on political issues all the time. We have a lot more in common as Americans than we do have differences, but we've got to get back to a point where, you know, political violence is not normalized the way that it has been. Because, I mean, one of the things that I'm worried about is, and what has been happening, as you know, is we'll have something like this happen, like the Minnesota legislators who were gunned down, and then a week later, everybody goes about their business, and we can't do that. We can't keep doing this.
We see this, what has to be a rise in political violence. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it certainly feels that way, and I think you know, I don't know if there's been any studies on it to show it empirically, but it definitely looks that way.
Well, when you just look over the last couple of years with the 2 assassination attempts on President Trump, and what we talked about in Minnesota and Paul Pelosi, all of that has been within the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's been, and then if you take it back a little bit further, of course, for us in Arizona, it started really with Gabby Giffords, right? So Gabby, all the incidents you mentioned, Josh Shapiro's house was set on fire, the governor of Pennsylvania, and now Charlie Kirk, who was an Arizonan and whose organization is based here. It's a lot. It has been a lot, and I hope to your point, it is a turning point in the sense that we can start to come together around what to do about it.
Because I get this sense that and maybe I'm Pollyanna to think this, but it used to be we the people.
Right.
All right? You could be a Democrat and I could be a Republican, and we could disagree vehemently over an issue.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you fell into the water and you were drowning, I wouldn't let you drown just because you were on the opposite political side.
Right.
But now I feel like people would not only let someone drown, but they would cheer about it.
I know. And, you know, I was looking at the social media comments about the Charlie Kirk killing, and it's terrible, Mark. It's so divided. And, you know, as you know, I've been both a Republican and a Democrat in 2 different offices. And you know, which is why I think I know that we have so much more in common, you know, that and so much to work on, and we need to love each other. We need to go back, we need to get back to a time where we think about each other as human beings first, right? And not political opponents first. And that feels like where we're at right now. And I think it does start with the rhetoric. We need to tone the rhetoric down. We need to, and we need to start thinking about some common sense reforms too, to be honest with you. I mean, well, maybe that's a conversation for a week or two down the road, but my goodness, how is it that we've gotten to a situation in which somebody can walk onto a university campus, as they did today, with a high-powered rifle and start shooting at one of the most important, at least on the right, political figures in the entire country?
I have to tell you that although maybe I had some issues with some of the things that he said politically,
Sure.
I did think that Charlie Kirk was a rapidly rising star
Oh, yeah.
on the right. And probably at some point in the future, we could have associated his name with a run for the White House. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I think possibly. I mean, he was only 31 years old. He was, as you know, incredibly popular among right-leaning young people. He was drawing crowds of thousands of people on university campuses. So sure, I think he was a rising star. I mean, I think you could probably make an argument that he was a part of the reason Donald Trump won the White House again. And so, again, obviously, I don't agree with the rhetoric that he used often. I don't agree with his political positions. But what I think we all can agree on is that we should not be accepting these kinds of political assassinations in this country. And then you add that on top of the fact, I mean, today we had another school shooting in Colorado.
I saw that, Evergreen.
Evergreen, 3 students shot in a state not too far from where Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So we have a gun violence problem and a political violence problem.
And at the end of the day, although gun violence is something that I speak out about a lot on social media and get a lot of static for it, at the end of the day, this political gun violence takes no party favor.
No.
It's
No.
equally divided between the right and the left.
No, I think if you, as you pointed out, when you look at what has happened just this year, that's exactly what it is. It feels like it's almost perfectly, and not in a good way, equally divided. And look, I mean, I think there are, in addition to this being just unbelievably tragic on a personal level, obviously for Charlie Kirk, for his
family, who they live here, of course.
They live here, thinking about them, thinking about his wife and his kids. But also, I worry about what this is going to do in terms of the way politicians treat their jobs. As you know, I am very insistent on being out there a lot at town halls. I've done 30 town halls as AG. I believe in public events, and one of the things I worry about is that people are not going to be willing to go out and do especially open air events like this one, because they're just so hard to protect people at. And so that's another potential terrible byproduct.
And I don't mean to get too personal, but you are a high profile political figure in this state, a state that I would say is as politically divided as any in the country, if not more in some cases.
Maybe the most.
Maybe the most.
Yeah.
How much on a personal level do you worry about your own safety, and what steps, if any, that you can share with us have you and your security team taken?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to, well, not happy, but I'll talk about that because I think it's important to talk about it. We do, because I insist on doing these town halls. I believe in them. I believe in being physically available to people and talking to people one-on-one, and kind of old-fashioned that way, and answering their questions. I think it's my job to stand and deliver and answer for the work that I'm doing at the AG's office. We have in the last year heightened security a bit, especially when we're at big public events. But, and I think we had a big public event that happened right after the Minnesota legislator was assassinated and had to make a decision. It was a big speech in Prescott. I think it was the No Kings rally day, and we had to make a decision about whether I decided not to go, and I decided to go. It was my hometown. It was Courthouse Square. It was an open-air event, and I decided that it was important for me to not back down and to go. But,
you're a mom.
I'm a mom. I'm a single mom.
And that changes
Yeah.
the whole dynamic. If it's just you,
Yeah.
you're scared, and who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
But now you have someone else who is very dependent on you.
Yeah. I'm a single mom, so it's something that I have to think about. I'd be irresponsible if I didn't think about it. But I also don't want to change the way that I do my job. And so, what I try to do is just be careful, be careful about what you do. But as you saw with this, event that Charlie Kirk was doing, when you have a huge crowd and you're in an open air environment, it's really hard to protect against everything. And what a security expert will tell you, or a security detail will tell you, is you can't protect against everything. So if the shooter was in a building, this was clearly, it looked very much like a premeditated assassination. Somebody walked in, and it would appear 200 yards away, took a clear shot at him, and that was a lethal shot, obviously.
Yeah, one shot, as far as we know.
As far as we know, one shot, and that is, as my security detail has told me, and as I have, obviously I talk to a lot of law enforcement as the top law enforcement officer in Arizona. It's just really hard to protect against everything. They do an amazing job. The police, sheriffs all across the state of Arizona always help out with public events, parades, speeches that politicians do. They're almost always involved, and they do an amazing job, but it's a lot to ask of them to try to protect against a sniper who clearly knew what he or she was doing.
And if it was from only 100 or 200 yards out, it wouldn't even have to be a special long gun with advanced optics to make that shot.
I don't know. It's a really interesting question. I guess we're going to find out, but it just looked very premeditated, and I hope to God that even by the time this airs, they will have found this person and that they will be held accountable under the law. They will be, clearly. But, man, just a tragic, terrible, terrible day for all of us in the country, regardless of what political party you align with, or if you don't align with any political party. This is terrible, and it's not good, and we all should be condemning it. That's why I'm here with you right now. That's why I wanted to get down here as soon as possible and talk to you about this and talk to Arizonans about this, because it does not matter. Obviously Charlie Kirk was not of my political party, but I am the top law enforcement officer for all of Arizona, and this crushes me to see someone killed like this, and to know that he's an Arizonan. He certainly lived here for a number of years. His family here, his organization here in Arizona.
And in some ways, I felt ashamed today, because I was ashamed of what our country not has become, because I don't think we're there yet, but is becoming. This is the kind of stuff you see in other countries, but not in America.
Right. There's a lot going on this year that you see in other countries and not in America, and this is one of those things. And so it's another reason I hope that we take a step back and start to think about this. Okay, how do we get back to the America that made us the shining city on the hill, that made us the exemplar for the rest of the world, that made us the envy of the rest of the world. And yes, we have had moments in our nation's history, right? The 1960s, where we had political violence and assassinations. JFK, RFK,
Martin Luther King.
And maybe if there is a hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, it is that we got through that time too. Interestingly, I guess, also a very polarized time in our nation's history, right? And somehow we made it through that. But this just feels very, very, very dangerous right now.
You echo exactly what I feel, and I'm sure thousands of people watching right now feel. Having said that, it is much easier said than done, because we are well down this trail of people who act out because they don't agree with you're no longer my fellow American.
Yeah.
You are my enemy because I don't agree with your politics.
Right. And that is how do you solve for that, right? I mean, in the cases where we've seen school shootings or mass shootings, oftentimes, and I think you pointed this out a little bit earlier, there were mental health issues. And maybe we'll see that that's the case in this shooting too. I don't know. But if this is just a pure political assassination, then how do you solve for that? That is what's so dangerous, I think, about this moment, and the fact that so many of these have happened this year to people of both political parties. And then the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is, what does this do to the willingness of young people to go into public service, right? If you are, I mean, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, you've got grandkids and kids. If you are thinking about whether or not you want to get involved in politics and you see this, which way are you going to go, you know? And we need talented people to still want to be involved.
On both sides.
On both sides, yes. Absolutely, on both sides, to still want to be involved in politics. And this is going to weigh heavily against that for a lot of people, I fear.
I agree. And you know, there is a lot to unravel with what has transpired on this day, because it's sort of like everything that we observed but kind of hoped wasn't happening has now happened.
Yeah.
A young, bright young man, a rising star on the right, gunned down, not even in the prime of his political life, because we don't know what or how far he would have gone. I just want to try to unravel this a little bit. Where do you, as someone who has a platform to enact change, where do you begin?
Well, I think I begin by having these conversations with people like you and with Arizonans about gun violence and about mental health and about coming together and, you know, doing everything I can from a policy standpoint to be bipartisan and where I can, and I have done that, you know. But I also think that there are things that we can do from a policy standpoint to deal with this. And, you know, Charlie Kirk may have disagreed with me about this, but again, how is it that so many people who probably shouldn't have high-powered rifles are walking onto college campuses and have the ability to gun down one of the rising stars of the Republican Party? And how is it that 15 years after Gabby Giffords was shot and almost killed outside of a Safeway, trying to do what Charlie Kirk was trying to do by talking to people on a corner at a Safeway, 15 years after that, Charlie Kirk was just assassinated in the same way that she was almost assassinated and that other people were killed, including a federal judge
and a young
girl in Tucson, we have really not made a lot of progress on these issues.
Well, of course, and any time these words come out of my mouth, I know what's coming, but I'm going to say them anyway. The elephant in the room is sensible gun reform.
Right.
And I don't know who has the political backbone in this country in Washington to enact meaningful change and start the dialogue, because right now it's a right issue versus a left issue.
Yeah, which it sort of is, except that when you take a look at sensible gun reforms like safe storage laws or red flag laws, I have proposed a red flag law that 3 years in a row and can't get a hearing down at the legislature for it. That notion of being able to take guns out of the hands temporarily of people who are deemed to be mentally ill or a threat, that is supported by, a majority of Americans and Arizonans and independents, Republicans, and Democrats. So those are sensible, to use your words, sensible gun reforms that actually do have pretty broad support, but it's hard to get them passed. They are being passed in some states, I will say.
But when I've seen those same studies that Americans are tired of this, and the numbers may go up even more after today. And yet, I would bet you that if we sat down and we had this conversation a year from now, we would have made zero progress when it comes to sensible gun reform, because people are either afraid of losing their political office, or are afraid of the cash machine that is the NRA lobby that will cut off their money supply, which helps them get reelected.
Yeah. No, I think that's on the right. That's the problem, right? Is that there's that people are seized up by the politics of it. But I think that at some point we have to get there. I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep letting this happen over and over and over again? I mean, a year from now, you and I are going to be, I hope to God not, but are we going to be sitting down talking about another assassination or God forbid, a school shooting in Arizona? That seems to be the pattern, is that something like this will happen that's shocking, that shocks us. I think the reason... Sickens us and shocks us, and yet in the past, a week or two will go on and everybody sort of moves on.
It's the news cycle. And this will have life for as long as it lives on the news cycle. And listen, I'd be the last one to say that we aren't partially to blame, because when you have issues like this, when you have school kids being gunned down, when you have the husband of a political leader attacked with a hammer in his home, when you have political leaders gunned down in their homes, and on and on and on, the common denominator is gun violence. And I used to say, let's have the politicians fix this. And then I lost faith in the politicians on both sides for doing this. So maybe it's up to us as individuals to rise up collectively and say, I know many people will roll their eyes as I say this, but people who will rise up and say, no more. This is not the America I want to see.
And you know what I think, Mark, it's going to need to be? It's going to need to be gun owners. I am now a gun owner.
As am I.
Yeah, okay, so we're both gun owners. It's going to need to be gun owners who stand up and say, okay, we can own guns, and we do, and we can have a Second Amendment, and we do, and we can protect the Second Amendment, but we can also protect each other. We can protect our kids. We can protect the next Charlie Kirk from being assassinated, or the next Minnesota legislator or legislator somewhere else from being assassinated. We can do all of the above. It's not either or. We can do all of it, and then we can love one another again. Because that's what this is. This is really about remembering that we love each other and that we are Americans. We are one country. And yes, we disagree with each other. Sometimes we vehemently disagree with each other, but we still have to have love for one another.
I agree, and protect each other.
And protect each other.
Republicans have to protect Democrats, and Democrats have to protect Republicans, and I think you're right. I think that's the only way we move forward long term as a country.
For sure. And I think we do that. We do that in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in our synagogues, in our schools. We do a lot of that, but we have to do even more of that, and we have to do that in the political sphere too.
Well, here's hoping that we don't have to have this discussion again, or at least we will make some progress before the next act of gun violence.
For sure.
Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.